Hello and welcome back to The Stage Door. We are here with some of our guests from the Graham Academy and Grossmorn Summer Music Board, and we are joined from two different spots all at once by Adriana Meggs and Jane Meggs. So welcome to The Stage Door.
Thank you.
So I guess just to make it easier, because Zoom only allows us to highlight one person at a time, we'll start with some kind of general questions. And one that I always like to start my interviews with is, and I'll ask you, Adriana, first. What would you say is the moment that you thought, hey, this is something I really want to do for my whole life? With, of course, you're a writer, producer, director, and actor, so it's many hats to wear. But what was the moment that kind of launched that journey?
It's funny because it was in grade 6, and Bob Richards was my teacher. I don't know if you remember him, but he lives in Corner Brook, and he used to do this really fun thing with us where he would get us to write on a blank piece of paper, and we would have to just be quiet for a while. And it was like I got bit by a writing bug when that happened. So and acting, I never wanted to act, and I still don't. So
that one, I guess you just got stuck with, and you know, I guess in the case of the Furies, you ended up replaying that a couple times now.
And it's a 14-year career. Listen, it's really worth anything that you can do to work with Mary Walsh is worth it. But yeah, that we got stuck in there because not stuck. Oh God, where is this gonna air? But we were in a writing workshop, so we were workshopping those sketches, and so I was there as a writer, not as an actor. But I did end up getting roped into play. It's not a huge role, but then I got to reprise it 14 years later on Christmas Fury, and not a day had passed according to the script, but according to my face, I'm sure it did. So that was fun.
Yes, I guess it is always the case that you never really know what's going to happen, whether it's a role 14 years ago that you get to redo, or whether it's something that you do once and there it goes into the void.
Yeah, I hope we do more. I think we are doing more. We keep hearing we're going to do more.
Amazing. And so Jane, I guess the same question for you. What was it that gave you the bug in the first place?
Well, I probably am supposed to say my sister, I imagine.
I thought I was supposed to say you, so.
I guess it depends on what bug, because I went to acting school first. So if I'm talking about that bug, I would say probably going to see theater at the theater school at Grenfell. And I remember going to see a couple of Shakespeare's that they had in repertoire from this really special class that had Susan Kent in it, and Johnny Harris and Lawrence Haggard and all these amazing people. And I was kind of shocked that people from Newfoundland and Corner Brook and whatever it is can actually do that. And it was like this light bulb that came on. I was like, oh my God, that's like a real thing. And it felt very tangible because it was essentially just up the hill. So probably that. And then I think I started to realize eventually, like, I loved the creative world more than I loved acting, because while it's an amazing thing, and I'm so appreciative of how hard it is for people that do that with their life, it didn't gel with my level of self-consciousness as a person. So I prefer being a writer, because you can do it at home alone, and then you push send and you never have to see someone's reaction as they're reading what you did. So it's a way safer and happier place for me.
And I'm sure I'm sure you're more sensitive as a writer now that you've had the experience as an actor, all those things.
Yeah, I think you're aware of how awful it is to have to say terrible dialogue. It just doesn't work.
So you don't write terrible dialogue.
I mean, as far as I'm concerned.
That's what you learned.
I think it's quite interesting when you look at as well, you know, how many people who have started out as performers that do start kind of drifting into this. This interview series actually started with talking to Johnny Harris, who of course started off as just performing and then started producing his own things, and now going through town to town, interviewing people, gathering research as part of a kind of documentary series and performing. So it certainly builds from that initial performance stage to wanting to connect to all of the facets of creation and performance, I guess.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And just, I just wanted to add, but also my sister was my inspiration.
I know. I was like, I wasn't in the play with Lauren Taggart and Susan Kent.
I know, but then in my transition.
And then I was probably in the audience with you. No, it's not. Yeah, and Johnny, I mean, Johnny kind of is, it's funny because I love Murdoch Mysteries and I love his role in that, but he was doing one woman shows with when remember he did Out of the Bog, and it was fantastic, and he brought that around St. John's. I don't know how far that traveled, but and it's, I love when he got that role on Murdoch. That was fantastic, and I love Crabtree. It's a great character, but I missed him and I missed his stand-up, so I was really glad when he started doing that again on Still Standing. It's such a great show.
Absolutely. I think it's a real treat, and it was really lovely talking to Johnny about it. And what else came up that, again, this community is so interwoven when we were talking with Johnny was...
Oh.
All right.
Here. Johnny mentioned that a couple times, Grown Up Movie Star, which had, of course, you at the helm writing and directing, Adriana, and a couple, of course, Andy Jones, fantastic, Sean Doyle, and Tatiana Maslany, who's kind of become a household name in the Canadian industry now.
Yeah. Mark O'Brien was in that too, and then he came on to do Goalie with Jane and I, and Maggie Meyer was in that. There was like, yeah, everyone. Susan Kent. We really we're pretty insular. Sherry White was in that. But yeah, Johnny was fantastic in that. He was. It was really fun to put a comedian in such a serious role. It gave us it was a beautiful performance. That was really fun.
Mm-hmm. So what was it like for you, Adriana, you know, to have that project, you know, back in 2009, so, you know, over 10 years ago, that you got to work with so many people, both your peers and, you know, someone like Andy Jones, who's kind of the pioneer with Codco. So what was it like to combine all those people in a room and create that film together?
It was definitely magic. I remember when I first moved to St. John's, Mom, you and I were walking down the road, and Andy was coming along in a panic because this was in the olden days when you rented movies, and he owed late charges, and they wouldn't let his daughter rent a movie because they owed late charges, and I remember Mom was so, like, we were so starstruck by him, and Mom was like, I can't believe they won't let Andy Jones rent a movie in St. John's. Like, he's the most famous person. But it was true. It's like, because it was like there was famous people in Hollywood, and then there's famous people in St. John's, you know what I mean? And I didn't really differentiate that much, you know, so I was definitely starstruck with Andy, and I love working with him very much, and have got to work with him a couple times since. Like, he was just in Little Dog.
Yeah, I think it's a wonderful thing, the kind of the Newfoundland royalty. Newfoundland really does one of, I think, the most special things we have is that we celebrate every Newfoundland victory in the arts is so celebrated province-wide. You know, it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, it is.
That's why we tried to, everyone that we cast in Goalie, we tried to cast Newfoundlanders in every single role in the whole movie.
All the hockey players.
All the hockey players. And then our producer was like, they can't be 50. They're hockey players. They have to be.
No,
And we're like, but that's all right. But
what? We don't. Yeah. Yes, we did. We got a lot of Newfoundlanders in there too, because we got Kate in there and Johnny again. Jeez, Lord.
So, I guess goalie is a great kind of transition, as both of you got to work together on that film, and it was a fantastic movie. It actually aired again recently at the start of this whole shutdown. CBC, I think, had it on one of their movie nights, which was lovely to rewatch. And that was in part based on a book of poetry by your father. So it really was kind of a full family effort to put that together. So what was it like to piece together that story of Terry Sawchuk?
It was really hard because Dad's book was poetry.
yeah. We realized like pretty early on that we had to like also have like a narrative story, because the poems didn't really have like a sort of narrative. They had his inner voices essentially imagined by our father, and we ended up using it for that purpose.
Yeah.
And then having to do a lot of research that he didn't provide us with.
No, he was very impressionistic, and it's such a beautiful book. It's like a haunting, beautiful book. Mm-hmm. And so I think what was a priority for us is just that we loved his themes, like the central ideas that he was trying to explore about, kind of, I always say that it's kind of mortality and, being a warrior at one point in your life, and then is there happiness when you're on top of the world? Like, there are beautiful, beautiful themes in there. And then we also wanted to make sure that it had the same tone. So that would be like, that you felt the same way. You felt haunted, and you were like maybe questionably sometimes on a ethereal plane. And if we could do that, then we actually did option a second biography of his life, so that we could have the chronological events.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's what made the film, for me as a viewer, it made it so much more interesting, that it was more than just your standard biopic, because it was interpreted from a different source that had already taken the life and kind of twisted things around. So it had a lot more going for it than just, here's this person's life. Yeah, cool. So it was a beautiful, beautiful film to watch.
Thank you.
That's nice. There was a country singer. I don't even know if I should say who his name is, but he got in touch with me over Instagram and said that he had struggled with depression in his life, yet he was up on stage constantly, and he was like, "Well, I'm supposed to be feeling good, but I feel depression and stuff like that." And he was like, "This movie's helped me so much. It's my life." And I felt really like, oh, okay, that's good, because I think ultimately, I think that is in a way what Dad was trying to do, is explore the idea that, you know what I mean, there's a definition of happiness, and then there's happiness, and it's not necessarily the same thing.
Mm-hmm. No, I think that's a wonderful way of putting it. And kind of moving on from film writing, you've both had opportunities to write fairly significantly for certain series as well, which of course must be quite different, because you have to, instead of following your A to Z structure, here's the movie, you have to follow all of these kind of individual arcs when you create those. So Jane, we'll start with you on that one, because it was quite a recent series that you created by, and then ended up writing most of the episodes as well for Bellevue. So what was that experience like, to not only create but then write, but also give permission to someone else to write a little bit of it?
It's incredibly hard. Like, it was it was really an amazing opportunity that just came because of a lot of things sort of lining up in terms of timing and luck and all those things that really just have to line up in order for something like that to happen. And I feel incredible. Like it was like the best school I could have ever went to. I learned an incredible amount, and it was my first series. So it's kind of a backwards way into the television world. So it was really like, I was really learning a lot, like just, it was an exhausting amount that I felt like I was learning. But I feel like I find it incredibly valuable then to go into somebody else's show or someone else's writing room with that kind of experience, because I feel like it really allows me to understand what that person is dealing with on an everyday basis, which is like, you only see the tip of the iceberg, I think, in terms of what it is. So I think that you know, that's been really helpful to me in my career right now. And in terms of like letting other people write, I wish that I had more time to let other people write more. Because we were ordered so late, and they had ordered the show and half of it was already, there was scripts for it. And so we had a 3-week writing room, which when I tell that to people in America, they just like fall down, because it's, people have 6 months, 9 months in a writing room to figure out a serialized show. I've been in a writing room for about 9 months on a 10-episode show. So it was like complete boot camp in a lot of ways, but I'm incredibly thankful for it.
Mm-hmm. And Adriana, what about you for the shows that you've been kind of at the helm of, with, you know, getting to see those episodes created and move?
It's very different from features too, because TV has a client in a much bigger way. Like the network is kind of the client, and they are the boss. So you do have to separate. You know, you might want to get in there and be like, oh, I can't wait to tell this version of the story. And you know what I mean? It's not really, it's like you don't really get to kind of make those decisions. And I always say, like, your job in a story writing room is to facilitate the vision of the showrunner and the creator. Like, you're there in a support position. So it's still really fun. Like, everyone sits around. There's 8 or so people. You know, you put tons of ideas up on the board. Everyone breaks the stories together, and then you go away with a good outline. Not when you have 3 weeks.
You're just crying.
When you have 3 weeks, it's like
23 hours a day.
A little chaotic. And I do wonder if Canadian writers and Canadian directors, I have no idea if that kind of like, just go do it now, like, does that help us, or do we learn faster, or is it not helpful? I don't really know. But we definitely don't have, like, we aren't working with the budgets that American shows are working with. And I think it was Stanley Kubrick said that the secret to making a great movie is time and money. We don't have either, ever.
No, but now what they're finding is that unlimited time and money is making terrible TV shows, because Netflix are so hands off, and they just throw money at their creators, and nobody's keeping them in check. And they're like, and it's just this like sort of meandering sort of.
Are you saying that Netflix is making terrible TV now?
No, I'm saying they're making amazing TV, and sometimes there are people who go to Netflix from like network, and without the boundaries, they're finding it harder, I think.
Yeah, I'm sure it needs a balance. Like everything, it probably just, you need to hit a balance somewhere in the middle there.
Mm-hmm. No, I think that's an interesting point, you know, and it's not surprising that we've reached the point where, you know, when Kubrick was creating, certainly time and money was everything you could ask for. But now with the company that can just be like, all right, here's the budget, we're producing it, put our name attached to it, but go for it. You see, especially I find, you know, there's a lot of shows Netflix produce that season 1 is fantastic. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, you doubled the budget and something totally disappeared from some of those seasons. So it's always interesting to watch and see kind of what happened there in the room, in the process.
The second season's interesting beast too, because at least in Canada, you might get a little bit of a bigger budget, but everyone gets a raise too. So it's interesting to watch like what happens with the shows.
Yeah, certainly. And Adriana, I see on with the recent the Lisa Moore Caught, you were on that not only as a writer but as the story consultant. So what is it like to take on that role instead of, it's a little bit beyond writing, I guess. You're kind of in charge of the material, or?
I'm not sure. I honestly don't know what that was. I don't know. I mean, you usually have a credit, like a kind of a producer credit. And I think that's mostly if you're in the room but you're in the room and you're very valuable in the room, but you're not writing a script for some reason. So then you would have that credit, and then you would have a written by credit for actually writing the script. I don't know. I don't know about the story consultant. Maybe I was on it earlier before.
You should look into that. Maybe you're owed some money there.
I know. Wait a second. What's going on? Paco is ripping me off.
Well, there we go. Now we have something to research for that.
Don't edit that out.
So I guess building now into the other side of that, what about, and both of you have had opportunities at this as well, where you come on to write an episode of a of course, Adriana, you've with Little Dog, you've had a couple episodes, and Rookie Blue, which had, quite a massive run, to have a couple episodes in that.
Jane and I did one together on Little Dog.
Oh, amazing!
Yeah, and then we were actually in the writers' room together, so that was really fun.
Very cool. And of course, Jane, I End with an E, which is a wonderful show that you had a couple episodes to be in the room on. So what's it like in that process where the show exists and the season arc exists, but you're in just a kind of handful of those episodes?
You want to go?
Well, it seems like you can just go like, the season arc exists, and what happens? Okay, so they go for a dog walk, and then someone loses a shoe, and I can go away to Mexico and write this and send it into you, and then they'll shoot it. And that's kind of what I think I thought it was when I first started this career, and that is not what it is at all. It's like, the season arc's not there. So you go in, and 8 of you, and you do the season arc together. And then everybody breaks your outline with you together, and you break everybody else's outline. So it's like everyone kind of has their hands in every single script. And then you go away and write it, and then the producers tell you to write it again, and then you do it, and then they tell you to write it again. And then the network weighs in, and they don't like this part of the season arc, so then you have to change this, and then you write it again, and then et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, for a long, long time. And then you probably go to set and produce it too, so you're in there.
Yeah, it's super collaborative, more than any other aspect of writing, like features or playwriting or anything. It's essentially like you just sit around with people all day. In fact, Adriana and I usually joke about how we don't need social lives as much as everyone tells us we do, because we sit around with people all day, and you sit around with like funny people making jokes all day, and the only way to like let your brain rest from like breaking episodes is to just digress on completely irrelevant social chapters of people's lives. So it's very social. And yeah. I think they used to farm episodes out. It used to be the way things were. People would do freelance kind of writing, but now it's very collaborative, and there's like one person's name on a script, but really it was 8 people who contributed. And
oh yeah, and sometimes you don't even know who wrote a script, because sometimes the showrunner will take them and rewrite all of them. I knew somebody who everybody in the room would write one act of a script, and then your name would arbitrarily be on one of the scripts, and the showrunner would take all of the like kind of Frankenstein-y acts and rewrite them himself. And then sometimes you'll do a lot more work on a script that's not than you did on yours, and you'll be rewriting someone else's script, and that's guaranteed the script that gets nominated for a Canadian Screen Award, and your name's not on it.
I guess that's the tricky thing with collaboration, but it's really interesting to hear that, because of course I know, like, you know, sketch comedy comes to mind, that is all about collaboration in the room, but it's so interesting to see that is the case with a lot of series now, and I think it's part of the reason that series have become so much more cohesive, that they're in a lot of ways, I think the series ties together well. So how does it work in the writing room, you know, with bringing up ideas? Like, of course there's some disagreements, but how do they get resolved in the end to create the product?
I mean, definitely the showrunner has got the sort of it all stops there. And I mean, I think room dynamics are so, it's just a crapshoot. Like, you just have no idea. I personally have been incredibly lucky in that I've never really worked with, I was gonna swear, and I was like, oh my God, I can't do that. Jerks.
Never worked with jerks?
Never worked with jerks. In a writing room. I've worked with really like supportive, kind people who like let everybody speak. So I think that makes for a really sort of fertile scenario. But I work right now, the show that I'm working on is like, it has this huge science component, and it has very like, it's
Science
got
fiction. I think.
no, real science.
Oh my God, how could
Quantum physics. It's
I don't
like,
know any physics.
so like I pick my, like I back out of the science talk and let the sciences do it, and then when it's more character, that's when I sort of, I think, you know.
And you call them sciences?
Yeah, and then they're like, oh, you must be Dr. Science Lady. Because I got all the terms. I know all the terms.
You know all the term like sciences and Dr. Science Lady. That means that's like the best woman at science ever. Yeah, and it you know, you learn how to, you can get really brave with pitches because everyone's going to not like so many of your ideas that it really just stops mattering. Like, you know what I mean? So you just got to put yourself out there, and generally people just kind of just stare at you blankly and then look at someone else. Like, no one's like, that's stupid. No one ever says that. They just wait for you to stop talking politely.
You do say that stupid. I feel like you're like, okay, we're at a place where you can say that to me, and
yeah, and then it feels good. Yeah.
You know, thinking about, you know, it must be quite amazing having, you know, to go into these different rooms, thinking about, you know, of course, this one's a science related one, but, you know, if you end up writing for a medical drama, which there's a lot of great ones. There's a wonderful one called Transplant, Canadian show. Gonna plug that show because I just like burned through most of it on Crave.
Oh, good. Oh, that's so great.
But the research must be so kind of immediately intense once you're in that room. All of a sudden you're writing about a totally different world than you wrote about the last contract.
Yeah, Adriana, you did medical.
Yeah, I did. I really kind of I liked looking at the gross videos of surgeries and stuff. It was kind of cool. But I mean, truthfully and ultimately, it's really, we just want to see ourselves reflected on TV. It's about relationships and character dynamics, and, you know, and just the fact that no matter, the truth about TV, the secret of TV is that whatever world you're watching, if it's outer space or a medical drama, you want to see the experiences that you have every day reflected back, and you want to see the people have the kind of journeys that you struggle with. And if you're seeing that, then, you know, you can write for anyone as long as you let the sciences talk when it's their turn. Like,
This is the rule. We never get to talk otherwise. Unless it's about science.
So I guess this question goes to both of you, but what was it about screenplay specifically as writers that drew you to that specific genre of writing. I guess it's not quite a genre, more of a style. But what was it screenplay that that spoke to you?
Money. It was
She's
the
not
only.
Just right.
What are you, sorry, Jane?
I said you're not wrong.
No, Jane wrote plays.
I did, and I loved it. And to produce your own play, it is so hard. You have to do everything. It is very hard. And then I did TV, and I was like, oh my God, people are doing too much for me. This is insane.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
then you get used to it. And I don't mean like they're doing things for me personally. I just mean like in plays, like you have to go put up your own posters. You're up till like midnight the night before your show opens, like putting up sandwich boards, and that was like indie theater. So I'm sure that, you know, other theater is more.
No, I still volunteer props when I'm doing a props, like when I'm having my first props meeting, when we're prepping a show. I'm like, I have one of those, and they just look at you like, just what?
You don't need your knickknacks.
How long have you been doing this? You don't need to bring your own props. I'm like, I know, it's ingrained in you. Like, it's like, but we're a community, right?
Also, I think also turnaround time is really appealing in terms of screenplays, because like I am in awe of people who can write a novel, but you have to know that you're going to buy years before you see anything. And with a screenplay, it's like 8 times out of 10 nothing's going to happen with it, but you may have spent a few months, as opposed to a very long time on a novel. And I'm saying that with like awe and total respect, but I think that you got to have the right personality for it.
I am jealous. I'm jealous of novelists, because I do think in writing in film and television, you end up with an awful lot of stuff that you love, and it's just in your computer, and you try to sell it and people didn't buy it. And so I actually was saying to Lynn Cody the other day, I was just like, I just feel really, you have this beautiful body of work in all your novels. And then she kind of, you know, she's moved over to TV for a few years now, and she's still doing novels. And I do wish that I had kept that I wish I had kept up creative writing, for sure.
You're still young.
I know, I'm very young.
You got time.
So, you know, of course, I think it goes without saying that in, you know, your siblings, and of course your parents were also involved in the arts. Corner Brook is quite an artistic community, and I should mention, of course, Grossmore Sarah Music artistic director David Meggs is also your sibling as well.
Oh yeah.
So it would be safe to say that family has played a part in kind of nurturing that journey, that it was a creative space to begin with, and that Corner Brook was a creative space as well to start with.
I know, if it wasn't for David, I don't think we would be doing any of this.
You know, he's really the root of all of it.
I know. I feel like he was the one who inspired us the most.
Yeah. Even you, before he was even born, I think he was inspiring you.
He was, yeah. And I think he inspired Dad even before he was born. That's probably why Dad became a writer.
But
I should point out he's not watching, so you're okay to.
I know, and he's not going to watch. He might pretend he's going to watch, but he will not. So we can say whatever we want.
But in seriousness, yes, I would say our family played a big part in us being sort of in the creative arts. And also, Corner Brook is a weird town in that way. Like, I don't think we knew that it was special when we were growing up, probably. Mm-hmm. And then when I got older, I'm not even going to mention where it is, but Adriana moved there too. I tried to move to like a small town outside of Toronto because I was like, I'm going to give my kids the Corner Brook experience. And it didn't happen.
No, it wasn't. Yeah.
It's not inherent in sort of towns that you're going to have like a Mr. Graham and
it's, yeah, I do feel like Mr. Graham is really worth bringing up here. It's like, it is a shocking it's shocking to grow up with that kind of music, and that kind of like music in church choir, music in schools, and then the littler choral groups that he builds, and then piano and voice. Like, he made this town sing, and that is invaluable. That's been like invaluable to my life for sure. To Jane's, because she brought it up and I interrupted.
No, I mean, you said it better. That's fine. And then you cried. So
can you tell? Oh, that's sad.
No, but and I do think having the university and the theater program there is amazing. And like, I went to a Newfoundland university and then went and saw plays in London for 6 months of my, like, it's kind of a strange combination of amazing stuff that's happening there. So and then like the March Hare that we always go to, and I also feel like this is like a Newfoundland thing, and that, like, when I always try to explain Newfoundland to people, it's like there's not a generation divide in the same way that there is in other places. And so I feel like we were always around adults as kids, and adults who were interested in you, and adults who would talk to you, and there was like music happening at events and parties and stuff all the time, and it felt like it was a very, like, I think that kind of just formed your brain in a certain way.
It's true. It's like, if you're always part of an artistic community and always exposed to artists, how can you find it? You don't find it a hard thing to join anywhere else, because it's where you belong. It's where you feel comfortable. And that's a huge gift. Huge.
I can certainly relate to that. Having went to Grenfell, and once you're kind of in the community in the theater school, you are connected in a totally different way. You know, it was a wonderful experience, and I still, you know, can go, well, not right now, I can't go out for drinks with anyone, but I could, before all this, go out for a drink with some of my profs. And you know, when Ken Livingston was still living here, and of course still around, he's since passed away, you know, we it was nothing to go to his house and just talk in the morning with coffee before him and Carol moved out, or go to the Glen Mill and have a scotch. It was a beautiful community to be a part of, and be connected to all these people that came here to build something new. And I think that's what's interesting about Corner Brook, is it's not all people who were born in Corner Brook that started something. It's people who chose to move from somewhere else and live here, as well as the people who were born here, that kind of created whatever magic that Corner Brook has.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, and you know, not to be all mean to him, I do feel like it made such an impression on our brother that he feels like he wants to kind of carry that forward in a way that is pretty nice.
I know, yeah, like he can't ever leave it, and he feels like he needs to keep going with it, and Mom needs to keep going with it.
Mom does all the work, we know.
Mom needs to do all, yeah. So David's like, I want to keep going with it. Mom's like, oh, okay.
And I keep going with it equals Mom keeps going with it.
Yeah.
Now
So,
he really can't watch this.
there we go. Hey. So I think it has been just so wonderful to reflect with you both. But we have a couple of questions now coming in from our students, and before we get to the second one, I'll start with one that's just, what would be your best advice that you could offer to someone who wants to kind of take the challenge and do something in the arts as a career? What, you know, no matter what path, whether it's known or unknown, what's the advice that you could give?
What do you?
I mean, I guess it depends on what facet of it, but you know, because I personally am someone who started in one field and moved to another, like, I think just try it all out and get involved in every aspect of it. I mean, I used to do the TNL stuff and I loved it, and I went and volunteered at the university before I went there, and I think, you know, it's just being around it is everything. Just be around it as much as you can, I guess. Probably the first step.
I also think that don't be in a hurry to leave, because I think I always felt very fortunate that I went to St. John's and went to NIFCO and did the film programs there and made films there and started trying to get them into festivals, because you can get swallowed up very easily in a city, in a bigger city. So stay at home and tell your authentic stories from your home, and that way you're showing the world that you have a voice and have something to say, and do it in a small pond, and then it'll speak for you when you're elsewhere.
Yeah, and I think you're right in that you probably can't figure out your voice in a big pond in the same way that you can if you're given the opportunity to just do a play in a small town. You get to do that. You get to find out who you are as a writer or a
That's
performer.
right. And so we do say, we talk about, oh, we'll collaborate, and oh, we have, networks kind of saying what our voice should be, but we had to have a voice to get there first. And if you're not able to develop it, if you're always kind of mimicking this showrunner's voice and mimicking that showrunner's voice, you kind of get lost. And I would hate to have not had that part of my career.
Mm-hmm. And I think both of you have hinted to this. I'm just going through a couple of the questions now. But what is the kind of key to being confident about what you've written? About, of course, you said just submit everything and don't care what the answer is and hope. But what is there any other secrets that you could share to being confident about writing something and pushing it forward?
I mean, I think, like, I don't know, for me, it feels like it does, I think, to some degree still come back to that kind of your own voice and your own unique voice, because that is the one thing that no one else can replicate. And so if you are, and I'm just speaking as a writer, but if you're writing from that place, you're the best version of that voice that exists. And so if you feel like you're able to sort of really understand who you are as a writer, and you feel like you're actually writing authentically from yourself, I feel like that's the best way for me personally to be confident.
And I would even add, like, and take every course, talk to every writer that has kind of done something that you admire, and do, like, watch the master classes, read Save the Cat. Like, don't submit. You get one or two chances to be read before people kind of aren't that interested anymore. They get excited about your voice. Make sure that you know screenplay structure. Make sure you like, there's a lot of people, and they're these amazing young voices, but there's a kind of a dismissal, and I was like it too, a dismissal of the rules. And it's like, you can break the rules, but you have to know the rules before you break them. So I would say learn everything you can.
Mm-hmm. I think that is one of my favorite things about choosing to be in the arts, is that you really, in every field you can't stop learning, but in the arts you really feel like you cannot stop learning. There's, everywhere you look, there's something new from a different person that you could learn something completely new and unexpected, and I love that about the arts. Let me just find our question now. So I'm going to unmute one of our students for our
I was wondering who this guy was here. I was like, I think he left because we didn't listen to his question.
We're all good. So here, just give me 1 moment. We have 2 questions before we finish up. I just got to find them now. So Max, you are going to be up first, and we can hear you now.
Hello.
Hi, Max.
Have you ever had, like, an actor or an actress that you've had a problem with?
Lots.
Yeah, they can be problematic.
They are, and they're problems, but you know what? The most important thing that you have to know when you have an actor you have a problem with is they're probably right. They know their character. They've been playing this character for a long time, and they're thinking about every single word the character says. So you got to buckle in and do the work with them. And if they have issues with what they have to say. Now, I don't know. I'm not talking about someone who doesn't show up to, like, I'm not talking about if you don't show up to set because you were like drinking the night before, like that I haven't had. Have you had that, Jane?
Uh,
Oh.
not specifically that. Like, I think there are two different, there's like problem actors who are not playing the game properly, and then there's people who have a lot of questions about the material, and they need to ask you, like, as the cameras are rolling and people are like, money's flying out into a trash bag. So, but I do think Adriana's right in that, like, even if sometimes I feel like even if you don't fully agree with them, it's like, it's in my best interest that they give the best performance, and so you have to find a way to speak their language so that they feel like they're authentically playing a moment, because otherwise it's not going to be good for anybody.
Yeah. Or write a zombie show so that you can kill them if they're problematic, and it won't be strange. Like, it won't be, you know, you can't kill the main character of a doctor show, but a zombie show, not surprising.
That was a very thorough answer to that question. Thank you both so much. And, you know, I will say there are certainly a couple shows, of course, most of them get massive media when all of a sudden a character does suddenly disappear. You know, I think, Grey's Anatomy with Derek Shepherd, they just all of a sudden, you know, unidentifiable person came in, and that was kind of the, let's write off this guy, okay? So it's interesting to.
They had to do that with a few characters on that show, I think.
There was some bad behavior. Oh, there were some bad behavior characters on that show too. Max, which kind of bad behavior were you talking about?
Just like problematic, like anything, really.
I've never had like diva actors. I've never worked with that sort of a scenario where people are like just like not engaged in the process, and I feel like that would be awful, and I'm glad that I never had that experience.
Yeah, sometimes you can say, we'll shoot it both ways, and then you just put your way in to the cut.
But
they get onto that one.
They're like, yeah, but you're just gonna do
We
it.
know it. Yeah. They don't like that. That's actually bad advice. That does not work. Work once.
And we have one last question before we finish up. This one is from Violet. All right, Violet, there
Hi,
you
Violet.
go.
Hi. Nice
How
to
are
meet
you?
you. I was just wondering, for you both individually, what is your favorite genre to write and work on?
I like female stories. I kind of think that it's a really exciting time for television right now because we have a lot of female protagonists. I don't care. I like female crime. I like scary female. I just watched Dead to Me. I like that. What about you, Jane?
I think probably like dramedy is really like, it's sort of right now there's such a, with like streaming, you can make a half-hour drama and an hour-long comedy, and they all sort of blend together. So I find like tonally TV is really interesting right now, but I guess my favorite is like something that is dramatic but absurdly funny at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Balance.
Yeah, well, life, you know, what's great about that is it's the easiest to write, I think, or it comes most naturally, because I think that life is really, can be tragic and at the same time can be funny, and or it can be, you know what I mean? It can be terrible things can happen, and you can have a really wonderful time remembering how hilarious somebody was at their funeral, you know what I mean? And it's just never one thing. So I love that too.
Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Right. Well, thank you so much, Violet and Max, for those great questions. And with that, we are going to clue things up. So thank you so much, Adriana and Jane, for agreeing to come on and share your experiences and your craft with our students and our audience here in Corner Brook. It means the world that we can still be connecting at this wild time. But
Yeah,
thank
great.
you. And we will see you next week at the stage door.
Bye.
Bye. See ya, everybody.
Yeah. Bye.
Thank you again.
We'll call you soon, Nanny.